The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here, and today I am with Dr. Marcia Reynolds. Marcia, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so you have over 40 years of experience in cultural change and transformational leadership. You've spoken in 41 countries on 6 continents, reaching over 100,000 or so people worldwide. You've published a whole bunch of books, and you work with clients like Stripe, Ernst & Young, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and many others. But you weren't always doing that. So take us back to the early years. You have, on your website, you kind of talk about this experience, kind of maybe where your interest in coaching and self-transformation began, which was when you were in jail about 20 years of age. So just take us back to that time and kind of fill in some of the information as much as you're comfortable with, what got you into jail and what was going on in your life at that time.
Actually, I think the transformation was prior to that. It was all about me and what I wanted and what was my path in life. And after was more about what can I do for others? So that was the big thing. I was young. It was, still a teenager. So it was typical stuff like that. It wasn't anything. I didn't rob a bank or anything out of the ordinary. But it was fascinating for me because, I have many degrees, but I always say that was my best degree. I really learned about people that I didn't know. I grew up fairly white, middle-class neighborhood, and here I was in a world that was totally different. And so it opened my eyes to different people and the lives they lead and the privilege I have. And that privilege has afforded me a wide perspective and an education. And what they pointed out to me, my cellmates, things that I could do that they couldn't.
How long were you there for?
6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so not a huge amount, but not overnight.
Right. Yeah. Long enough for some things to set in. So you mentioned that kind of prior to that experience, everything in your life was about you and, where you want to take things. And then it shifted afterwards to more about what you could do for others. I mean, that's interesting for me to hear because I think a lot of people, when you ask them about what drives them or, what's meaningful for them, they'll say it's about others. Like I do my work for others, but really what drives them is what's happening internally. Like it's, their goals. I want to achieve this amount of wealth. I want to have this amount of impact. I want to do these things, cross this off my bucket list. So just tell me a little bit more about the real transformation, maybe any way that kind of showed up in your life afterwards or the thoughts that you were having that made that more real for you.
Well, I think I look at being in jail as a near-death experience. And yes, there was a sense of if I don't turn my life around, this is where I will be the rest of my life. But it wasn't in there. It was the women who said, go out and make a difference and show people that you could walk this dark path, but still accomplish things in your life. So they were a true inspiration to me. But the curiosity was, people constantly ask me, so how did you walk out of that? Because I was in there for drugs. I was an addict. And I was able to walk away from that. So there was a lot of people asking me, how do you do it? And I was like, I just decided. And this one time, this woman said, I'm not asking you for you to acknowledge you. I'm asking because I want to help my drug addict son. And that's when I realized I need to go research what happened, what changes, how can you change people's minds and see the world differently? And so it launched me on the whole quest of learning. How do we learn about ourselves and the world in a different way? So it was that woman that did that for me.
And was it one specific person in that scenario, or were there many others that also, made you think similar thoughts and kind of?
No, she was the trigger.
She was the trigger.
I had not thought about it in that way. Of course, once she shifted my perspective, and this is one of the things I believe in coaching, when people reflect back to you what you said and ask you questions and you have a breakthrough moment, your brain changes forever. You can't go back. She changed my brain with that. And then once I shifted, I started to recognize that people were asking me, about what I did, what I know, for them, to help themselves and to help others. So that's when I realized, even at a very young age in my 20s, that I had some wisdom to share, but also that I could research. So, I went on and got a second master's in adult learning and really tried to figure out what goes on in the brain when we learn, when we change. And so it really drove me into that deep desire to understand that so I could then turn around and share it with other people.
When did the transition happen for you between the research and the education and the additional degrees and business or commerce and actually, being compensated for that knowledge and that research that you were, diving deep into?
Well, I think after I finished my first master's, I had to get a job. What drove me into commerce was I had to survive,
And so what was the first job that you had?
In a psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
But I was the audiovisual coordinator. I was pushing around television sets. But the interesting thing, my boss decided to go get her doctorate. She ran the training department for this hospital corporation. Mm-hmm. And she said, I think you can do this. And she dumped the whole department in my lap, which was another reason I said, I have to go get another degree and figure out how to design good training. Mm. So, and my first assignment was management training. So again, she launched me on a very significant path in my life. So I always say, I had an accidental career.
So you do that. So you now figure out, you go back to school, learn more, then start to apply. When did you venture out onto your own and leave that place? Like, just kind of walk us through the steps from that point to you actually starting your own business.
Well, after I got out of school, I actually thought I have things to share. I should start my own business. And that was a disaster. I was too young. I really didn't have enough perspective. People wouldn't hire me. Yeah. And again, I needed a job. So, I worked for the hospital, and then the pay, though, wasn't that great, and they were making changes, and I was not getting the promotions I wanted, and got offered a job in high tech. And, this was like mid 80s when, computers were just coming into play. In fact, I was a part of the whole first PCs that were out there. So I know I'm aging myself. But, I worked for a hardware company, then I worked for semiconductor, and I recognized that I needed to get the experience, not just for credibility, but for me to understand what really goes on in companies. So I worked in 2 tech companies and recognized I moved into leadership, but like my last company, I hit the glass ceiling. They basically said, we're not promoting you anymore. And there were no women above me. So, and most of my training was leadership communications to engineers, male engineers, which was a pretty good challenge. So I think those years I was greatly challenged. And the second company, we turned the company around in 3 years from bankruptcy to the top IPO in the US. And I was in charge of the cultural change, which gave me a huge amount of experience, applied knowledge, not just how you help individuals, but how you change a system. So at the end of that, after we went public and I had plenty of money, although I left 2 years of unvested stock on the table, they were shocked. I said, I have things to do and you're not giving me what I want. And it was that week I was leaving, I read this article about coaching. And I said, this is fascinating. I know my one-on-one conversations have always been significant in changing people's minds. And so I looked into it. I signed up for a coaching school, and the timing was right. I helped to create the International Coach Federation and helped launch coaching into the world. And so it was meant to be. It was meant to be. And I remember I saw my boss 2 years after I left, and he's like, well, are you really suffering? I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm doing quite well.
So, Marcia, talk us through, you make this transition from, working in high tech and so forth to now to coaching. You've kind of found this passion, this area of great interest. You work on developing the ICF. And then how do you now go about and actually start to be a coach yourself and win clients? Kind of take us through what those early days look like of you finding clients, landing business. What was that like for you?
Yeah. Well, I joined the coaching school in 95 and started my own business at that same time. So it's not like it took me years. And I think, Coaches have to get out there and coach. But because I worked high tech for all those years, I had no fear of it. So I was one of the first coaches to have a website, you know. I also was really into emotional intelligence, and the government, many agencies hired me because I was the only one online they could find other than Daniel Goleman. So it's like, you know, I see something.
Let me stop you there, right there for one second. So just to clarify, so what I'm hearing is you were familiar with technology, right? You weren't scared to essentially put something out there, even if it wasn't perfect. And because of that, people started to find you because not many people were doing what you were doing. So if somebody maybe back in those days was typing in coaching, whatever it might be, there was a good chance that your website would have come up or they found you through that way. Is that accurate?
Yeah, globally, you know, and I always saw myself, because all my companies were global. So I always saw myself as a global marketplace.
Yeah.
So I wasn't looking for local business. So yes, people from all around the world for both emotional intelligence and coaching. I had the courage to step out and not just do a website, but say, I do this. This is what I do. Hire me, you know? And they did.
Tell us more about that. So when you say you had the courage to do that, what are you comparing that to? What do you see people doing where you go, yeah, clearly they don't have that courage. They're missing something. You know, what was the difference between what you did and what you see people not doing, where you believe they can improve?
They think they need to be perfect before they put themselves out there.
Yeah.
They need, or at least great. You know, the founder of my coaching school, who founded the ICF, in our first class said, go coach. And we're like, how can we coach? We haven't had any training. And he said, oh, just go love them. And that's when I realized just creating a safe space for people to talk things through where they can show up as themselves and they may not be able to do that anywhere else was powerful. So I just got better at it every year, but I trusted that I knew enough. But remember, I had 16 years of corporate experience in teaching communication skills, working with leaders, all those life experiences. So I thought I knew enough to get going.
Right. I think that's...
Again, you got to pay your dues. I do believe that.
No, I completely, I think that resonates with a lot of people listening because many of the clients that reach out to us and come in our coaching programs and all that kind of stuff, they're coming from that place where they have a lot of, you know, executive or corporate experience or nonprofit, whatever it might be. So they have expertise, but now they're really looking at how do they build a successful consulting business or move it to a different level if they've already been consulting for a while. And you're right. One of the biggest things that holds people back is, you know, between their 2 years, it's the mindset. It's I need to be perfect. I got to get just right. You know, maybe my message is off and I should wait to try and figure out how to do it better. And so they're not taking action. What have you found, or what kind of suggestions would you offer to somebody who's going, yeah, like they're nodding their head. Yeah, I see myself doing that, where I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I'm not putting stuff out there as much as I could, whether it's an article or applying to speak virtually somewhere, whatever it might be. What advice or suggestions might you offer them? While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
You know, in my last book, my favorite line says, they want you to be present more than they need you to be perfect. I don't think, especially now, you know, people are accepting so much what's not perfect online.
Yeah.
Blog posts are all over the place. I do think you need to check your grammar, make it look somewhat professional, but they're looking for the wisdom. They're looking for your care. They aren't looking for your perfection.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
So Marcia, you've done a lot of work in creating trust and rapport in the workplace. For the consultant that is listening to this, that really wants to achieve and establish stronger rapport with new clients, what suggestion would you offer them? And what are kind of some of the best practices when it comes to building rapport with new clients? What are some things that you've done that you've seen work really well or clients have done and so forth?
Well, I think being a trained, certified coach has helped me not just be a coach, but helps me sell my business, helps me be a trainer, because I've had to develop not just my presence, but my curiosity. And so many people go in thinking when they need to sell themselves that they need to tell people what they need and what they can offer, instead of just being very curious. So what's going on with you? What's your greatest challenge? What is it that you've tried but you think is missing? What's the greatest pain that you're feeling right now? And how much is that costing you? Because you want to, compare working with you and the cost savings, not just how they're going to feel about it or the impact personally that they'll have. So I think that listening and reflecting and asking questions is really critical when we're meeting with clients, in almost any interaction.
So one thing that I think comes up quite often for people when they hear those types of questions, they go, well, those are like very personal questions. And if you just met somebody, so at what stage do you think it's appropriate to ask kind of those deeper, really meaningful questions? Is that only once somebody's engaged you and they've given you permission? If so, how do you ask for permission? Or are these the kinds of questions that even before somebody's paying you, before they actually become a client, when you first meet them, that you should be asking?
The idea that that's a fear and not a reality, that, I can't ask those questions, but it's the emotion you bring to it. I call it compassionate curiosity, that I'm not grilling you and I'm not doing it because I want to figure out how to sell to you. They have to sense that you have sincere intent, that you really are curious and want to know, and you're there to help them. And if they feel that, they will appreciate that you have asked those questions instead of just, talking at them and they're not hearing you anyway.
Is there anything that you do before? So let's say you've identified someone that you feel you could help, or they've identified you, whatever it might be. And we'll come to that maybe in just a moment around the marketing side. But before you actually have a conversation, and whether that conversation would have been face-to-face, maybe now it's, through Zoom, maybe it's still face-to-face depending on where you live and so forth. What are you doing, if anything, before you sit down to have that first conversation? Are there any kind of materials or information or anything like that you provide to somebody before they actually become a client, just having that initial conversation with you?
Well, there's two things. You said, what do you do and what do you provide? The research that I do is different than what I provide. So always, I'm hired by companies to come in and work with their leaders or teach their leaders how to use coaching skills. I do take the time to research the company because I've made the mistake of not doing that.
What does that look like? When you say that you research the company, what's your process for that? Is it going to their website? Is it reading Glassdoor reviews? Like what are you doing to better understand the companies before you start working with them?
I just go to their website. I just want to know who they are, what they do, what's their market. What are they claiming? How long have they been in existence? The challenges they face aren't going to be public. So that I have to discover in the conversation.
And what are then companies typically bringing you in for? What are the main areas where you see that are top of mind for them that they're looking for help with?
That's shifted a little bit. And like I said, there's always those that need a pool of coaches for their top executives. So that's kind of a staple. I also have been teaching leaders coach for 25 years. So if they want to teach their leaders coaching skills, I have that. But what's changed is they're recognizing that a one-day workshop isn't going to do it. So now they're really asking, create a coaching culture. How do we shift the organization so the mind shifts and the conversation shifts? So I've been going in and consulting with them on cultural change. I work with generally the HR and talent development people, and I even have a in-house certification program so they can get ICF certification. And then they roll out and do the teaching. I will probably still coach their top people because the top people don't want internal people. So I'll do some coaching, and some training and some consulting and helping them shift their culture. And I've got a couple of companies, big companies, waiting in the wings right now. It's like, we want to wait until we could do some of this live, so it probably won't be till next year. But it's been amazing to me how it's shifted to culture change, not just, one-day training, which I think is great.
Knowing, seeing that shift happening, have you changed anything in your business model, in your messaging, in your offerings as a result of that shift in the marketplace?
No, I've always offered that. I've had presentations and systems, for years, and I've done in-house certification programs for a number of big global corporations. So it's been there for a long time, but rarely called on.
Interesting.
Okay. Like I said, now they're calling on it, and it's like, hey, I got it. Here, I'll send it to you.
Right.
So have I highlighted that in my website? Just this past year, and I change my website frequently, So the idea that people would create a website and let it sit, it's like every 2 years, I hone the message, I determine who I am. And I really, with my last book, this book, Coach the Person, Not the Problem, I said, I'm a coach's coach. And that's what I'm going to declare on my website. I'm not going to say I do leadership. They'll just get that. And so I shifted to really focusing on coaching. And so it's in the message, but it's not a highlighted service in that, call me to change your culture. I just say, I do this. That might be next year.
Right. And so the organizations, specifically the organizations that bring you in for those programs or to coach their top executives and people, how are you finding that business? Is it something that you're doing to, have a conversation with them? Are they just finding you and they're coming to you? Just break down, kind of take us a little bit into kind of your marketing and sales of your business currently.
Okay. I don't do direct sales. Never have. I've always said I market by visibility. I speak. Not so much now, except for online, but I'm doing a lot of webinars. I write books, so the one I mentioned to you is my 4th book, and it's doing very well around the world. And, I'm on faculty of coaching schools in 4 countries. They promote me, and I'm about to do this huge program, a 6-month coaching program for thousands of coaches through WBEX, the World Business and Executive Coaching Summit. That already, just promoting the free masterclass is already getting people to email me and say, I want to talk to you about this. So I put myself out in the world as an expert.
Most of that come from you reaching out, so the different speaking engagements or the webinars. Just take us in through that in a little bit more detail, because I want to make it very tangible for people. Because I think oftentimes that's what people want as well. They want to be speaking in different places, or they want to have their article published in a publication or, whatever, featured in some association. And they have that desire, but then they don't necessarily connect the dots between the desire and actually getting that result. So if we just use the example of, let's say, a webinar, what are you doing when you go, okay, I want to get onto more webinars right now, because given with COVID and everything, the uncertainty in the world, there aren't a lot of live stages right now. What have you been doing to then get on to those webinars?
Mostly my book promotion.
And what does that look like? Are you sending the book? Is it your publicist, or just kind of specifically, what are you doing?
Yeah, I had a publicist for the book launch, and we send it out there. But also recognize I'm fairly well known in the coaching world. And so ICF chapters are constantly asking me to speak for them. I accept, all those free things to build the visibility.
Yeah.
Whenever I see anything like, HR.com or, places where we're looking for this. Now recognize we started this with the concept of research. I am constantly researching and applying new information, new practices that excite people. So you can't recycle old stuff, and definitely don't use other people's stuff. So they know they're going to get something cutting edge from me. And that's a lot of work, but it's the way I've kept myself out there. So you need to do that and be on top of things. I was teaching like how to coach through crisis, through fear and uncertainty in January. I wasn't waiting till now, but recognize I've been teaching in China for 10 years. So they asked me in January, can you, do this webinar for us? And so I had it and I repurposed it all over the place.
So before we wrap up, I mean, I love that your business is, and your mindset as well is so global. And that's something that we share. We have clients all around the world. I feel more like a global citizen than I do a Canadian citizen to a degree. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, why is that for you? Because a lot of people kind of default to, I should just focus on my local area, like my own city or my own state or my own country. But both you and we have, thought beyond that, like we're looking beyond borders. And so in your case specifically, Marcia, why did you end up and continue to this day focusing globally, not just in your local area?
Well, actually, the companies I worked for since 1985 traveled me, and so I've been traveling internationally for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So in my mind, when you said global citizen, I've always seen myself that way.
Yeah.
So the limitation wasn't there. With the internet, who knows? I list where I'm at just because of the time zone. But I never saw, frankly, there's not a lot of corporations in Phoenix, in Arizona, corporate headquarters. And so it's like when I looked at where's my business, it wasn't here anyway. Mm-hmm. So I just, used the internet to put myself out there in a great big way. That's all. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Marcia, I want to make sure that people can learn more about you and your work and your books. Where's the best place for them to go?
My website is covisioning, one word, covisioning.com.
Fantastic. We'll have that up in the show notes. Again, Marcia, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom, best practices, and experience with us here today.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great conversation. I appreciated it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.